want to start at the end. I want to tell you what I found in the last unit before I tell you how I got there. Because if I describe what I found first, and then walk you through the hour I spent working my way toward it, through every wall, through every hole, getting closer without knowing, you will understand why I still think about what was moving above me. A little context. I did armed patrol services for Section 8 housing in a major city for a few years. The properties ranged from manageable to genuinely dangerous, and you learned fast which areas required which approach. Some properties were bad enough that a lot of us would drive with a hand on the gun. You got used to calibrating quickly. One of the properties on my route was a vacant residential building. 3 stories, about 15 units wide. It had been cleared out by the city and boarded up, but property management still wanted periodic checks. Make sure nobody had moved in, document the condition of the place. Usually it was the same thing every time. Teenagers, drug paraphernalia, nothing that rose to the level of a real emergency. Do your walk. Document. Move on. This particular night I came around the rear of the building and noticed one of the boards was slightly ajar, not completely off, just pulled away from the frame enough that someone could squeeze through. I radioed my position, confirmed I was going in, and headed inside. I want to be clear about something. I am 6'2" and 230 pounds. With a full duty belt, vest, and radio, I am not a small profile to be moving through a tight space. I noted that detail in my head because it became relevant. The interior was what you would expect from a place abandoned mid-occupancy. Whatever the tenants couldn't carry, they left. Furniture, clothing, personal items, family photos still on the walls, drug paraphernalia scattered through the hallways, graffiti on most surfaces, standard for a building that had been sitting open long enough for people to find their way in. What was not standard was the tunnel system. Someone, or more likely a group of someones over a period of time, had cut holes through the drywall and support framing connecting every unit on each floor. Not random damage. A deliberate system running the entire width of the building, allowing you to move from unit to unit without using the hallways at all. Some of the holes had been reinforced around the edges. Some units had large furniture or additional boards placed directly in front of their main doors, forcing anyone doing a sweep to go through the wall holes instead of the doors. I started going through them. Each hole was tight enough that I had to angle my shoulders and work the equipment on my belt through carefully, scraping along the edges, drywall dust coating my uniform. I was documenting as I went, photographing what I found in each unit. Unusual, but not yet alarming. Then I got to one of the last units on the ground floor. This unit was different from the others. Where every other unit had debris and furniture and the accumulated mess of people passing through, this one was completely cleared. Nothing on the floor, nothing on the walls, just bare concrete and bare drywall. And in the center of the room, a mattress. I stepped through the hole and walked toward it. That's when I saw the blood, not a small amount. Not something you could explain away as a minor injury. The mattress was stained heavily, and the staining extended outward onto the surrounding concrete in a pattern that took up most of the center of the room. I have seen enough on this job to know the difference between something minor and something serious. This was serious. I found the shell casings on the second look, 3 of them, .40 caliber. On the floor near the mattress. I stood in that room and took photographs and documented everything I could see. I was still writing notes when I heard it. Movement. From directly above me. the second floor. Over the unit I was standing in. Not the building settling, the specific sound of weight shifting. Something moving slowly across a floor. And that's when it fully landed on me what I was actually doing. I was alone. No backup was coming. Nobody knew my exact position inside this building. I was not a police officer. I had no authority to be investigating anything, and no support structure behind me if something went wrong. I had squeezed through a series of increasingly tight wall holes in a building with a cleared room, a blood-soaked mattress, 3 spent casings, and now something was moving on the floor above me. I drew my sidearm, and I got out, clearing each hole as I backed through, checking corners, moving as fast as I could while keeping my profile down. I did not stop until I was through the rear board and back at my patrol car. I drove off the property and wrote the report from a parking lot a few blocks away. Property management was satisfied with the detail. I got moved to better assignments after that. We never found out what happened in that room. The police were notified. I never received follow-up. What I still think about is the movement above me. Not the blood, not the casings. Those have explanations, even if they're bad ones. What I can't fully account for is what was moving on that second floor while I was standing in that room. Whether it knew I was there, whether it had been watching me work my way through those wall holes for the last 20 minutes. I got out fine, but I was in that building a long time before I heard anything. And I'll never know exactly how long something up there was listening to me before I heard it move. I need to describe what we saw on the camera first, because it's the detail that makes everything else harder to dismiss. My supervisor and I were in my office, late shift, just talking. One of the surveillance monitors was showing a hotel hallway. Nothing unusual about that. We both happened to be looking at it when the lights on screen started flickering slightly. We watched for a few seconds. Electrical fluctuation, probably. Hotels have those. Then something started moving down the hallway from the far end. I want to be careful about how I describe this because I don't want to overstate it. It was not a clear figure. It was a shape. Vaguely human in proportion, slightly distorted, moving the way a person walks but not quite matching the weight or substance of a person. Almost transparent, but not quite. Like the camera was registering a distortion in the air that happened to have a human outline. It moved the full length of the hallway, passed under the camera, and went off screen. My supervisor and I looked at each other. Then we looked back at the monitor. The hallway was empty. The lights had stopped flickering. We didn't say much. Just exchanged that specific glance you exchange when you have both seen the same thing and neither of you has an immediate explanation for it. It became a story we told occasionally when the topic of the casino being haunted came up. Then the pandemic hit and the casino closed. As security, we still had to be there. The property didn't stop needing coverage because the guests were gone. What changed was the quality of empty. A working casino is never quiet. Slot machines, overhead music, the constant movement of hundreds of people. A closed casino at 2 a.m. with no guests and no machines running is something I don't have an accurate comparison for. The silence had a weight to it. There were 5 of us on the property at any given time during the closure. 5. I knew where every one of them was, every minute of every shift. That matters because of what started happening in the hotel rooms. The hotel had been fully vacated. Every guest gone, every room cleaned and locked. One of the exterior cameras happened to cover the hotel building from outside, a wide shot showing several floors. I was reviewing footage one night when I saw a light come on in one of the rooms. Not the overhead light, a lamp. The warm yellow-orange glow of a bedside lamp visible through the curtain. Nobody was in the hotel. I knew exactly where our 5 people were. None of them were in the hotel. None of them had any reason to be. I sent 2 officers up with an access key. The lamp on the right side nightstand had been turned on. That was not the strange part. The strange part was the rest of the room. The pillows from both beds had been thrown to different areas of the room. Not fallen. Thrown with the specific randomness of something scattered deliberately. The toilet paper had been completely unrolled from the holder onto the floor. Toiletries from the bathroom shelf had been moved to the desk. The room had been gone through in a way that felt purposeful, but without any clear purpose. We documented everything, turned off the lamp, and locked the room. 2 nights later, it happened again. Different room, same floor, lamp on, room disturbed in the same way. Pillows moved, toilet paper unrolled, items displaced. We checked every access log. No key had been used on that room. The door showed no sign of forced entry. It kept happening for the duration of the closure. Not every night, but regularly enough that we stopped being surprised and started treating it as something we would have to investigate and document. The pattern was always the same. Lamp on, room disturbed, no explanation for entry, no key usage, no person accountable. Management had no answer. Facilities checked the electrical. Everything was normal. The locks were functioning correctly. The access logs were complete. There was no mechanism by which those rooms should have been accessible. The casino reopened several months later. The hotel filled back up. The incident stopped immediately, not gradually, not over a period of time. The night guests came back. The rooms stayed as they were left. That's the part I come back to most. When the building was full of people, nothing happened. When we were the only 5 people on the entire property, something was moving through the hotel and using those rooms in a way we couldn't account for. And when the people came back, whatever had been doing that stopped. Like it was only interested in the space when it was supposed to be empty. Like it was only comfortable when we were the only ones there. A camera in a closed casino showed 2 of us something moving down a hallway. And then a year later in the same building, something kept turning on lamps in empty rooms. The only thing those 2 situations had in common was that both times, the building was not supposed to have anything in it. Three people had died in this building. I want to be straightforward about that before I describe anything else, because the history is the foundation. Without it, some of what I'm about to tell you sounds like the kind of thing you explain away. With it, it becomes harder to do that. I was assigned to an industrial complex that included a large aircraft maintenance hangar. The complex had multiple buildings, and I covered all of them on my overnight shifts. The hangar was one specific structure on the site. Large, the kind that holds commercial aircraft for servicing, with high ceilings and a floor space that takes several minutes to walk across properly. The first death was a worker pulled into a jet engine during a maintenance operation. The second was an electrician electrocuted during a repair. The third was a man who took his own life inside the building. 3 separate incidents. separated by years, same structure. The maintenance crew assigned to the complex would not enter the hangar after 7 in the evening, not as a formal policy, not because they were told not to. They simply would not do it. If something required attention in the hangar after 7 p.m., it waited until morning. I asked one of them about it once, early in my assignment. He gave me a flat look and said there were things in that building at night that he wasn't paid enough to deal with. He didn't elaborate. I didn't push. The first thing I noticed was the lights. The hangar had a large lighting system across the ceiling, industrial fixtures covering the full floor space. On certain nights they would cycle, not flicker the way a failing bulb flickers. Sections of the lighting would go off and then come back on in a pattern that moved across the ceiling in a way that felt less like an electrical fault and more like something moving under the lights. I documented it each time. Facilities checked the system repeatedly, found nothing wrong. Then a door stopped opening. There was an exit on the east side of the hangar that I used on my rounds. Standard badge reader access. I would present my badge, the reader would register it, the lock would disengage. I could hear the mechanism release clearly, and then the door would not open. I would push. Nothing. The lock had released. The door was not jammed. It simply would not move. This happened multiple times. Always the same door. Always the same section of my route. Every time I reported it, facilities checked the door and found it functioning normally. That I could file away and continue. What I couldn't file away was what happened to one of the other guards. He had gone into the hangar on his shift to do his check. He came back to the command center about 20 minutes later, covered in blood from a gash on his head. He said he had been pushed. Not that he tripped, not that he lost his balance. That something had pushed him from behind, and he had gone down a short flight of stairs near the south end of the building. He was completely clear on this. He was not confused or disoriented. He said he felt hands on his back before he went over. He never went back into that building. After that, the pool of guards willing to enter the hangar on their shifts got considerably smaller. Over the following weeks, smaller still. People found reasons to route around it, to cover other buildings instead. I understood why. I had seen what the other guard looked like when he came back. Eventually, I was the only one who would go in. I want to be honest about why I kept going. Partly, it was the job. The building needed to be covered and someone had to do it. Partly, it was something harder to explain. A stubbornness about not letting a building make decisions for me. I went in. I did my check. I came back out. Every shift. I learned to move quickly. I learned which sections felt different from others, and I did not linger in those sections. In fast, cover the floor. Out fast. Done. I have videos from inside that building. I recorded them on my phone during shifts because I wanted documentation of what I was seeing, and because, if I'm being honest, I wanted proof that I was in there doing what I said I was doing. When I watch them back, they look like footage from a building that has no business being as unsettling as it is. High ceilings, bare floor, industrial equipment, a completely ordinary space that does not look like anything is wrong with it. I eventually moved to a different site. The hangar is still there. The complex is still running. I don't know who covers that building now. What I know is that an entire maintenance crew made a collective decision not to enter that building after 7 in the evening. Not one person, not a superstitious individual. An entire crew, by unspoken agreement, decided that whatever was in that hangar at night was not something they were willing to be around. They made that decision based on experience. I didn't ask them what specific experiences led to it. I didn't have to. By the time I was the last guard willing to go in there, I had enough of my own.